All right, so today we are going to be taking a deep dive into Spanish contract law.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love contract law.
So specifically today, we're going to be looking at this concept of invalidez del contrato,
Okay.
or invalidity of a contract. And we're going to try to learn how Spanish law kind of handles those oops moments.
Right?
When agreements go sour, what happens when a contract is deemed invalid?
Yeah, and what's interesting is that Spanish law actually has a very particular way of dealing with these situations.
Okay.
We'll be looking at the three main ways a contract can be challenged. So, nulidad, annulabilidad, and rescission.
And we're going to be drawing all this information from a very interesting source.
Oh.
It is a multidisciplinary law firm in Almeria called MCHM Abogados.
MCHM, what?
Yeah. It's like they're spelling it out for you, letter by letter.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And they are members of the illustrious College of Attorneys of Almeria and handle cases across Spain.
Oh, wow.
So they definitely know what they're talking about.
Okay.
So
I'm excited to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
Me too, about these three concepts.
and they highlight this landmark case
Okay.
from 2017
Mm.
involving a real estate deal gone wrong.
Oh, dear.
So you can imagine a developer secured a contract to build like this luxury resort, right?
Yeah.
But then it turns out that the land was actually protected under environmental regulations.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So they couldn't actually build on it.
Yeah, it made construction like totally illegal.
Wow.
So the whole project was doomed from the start.
Totally.
And the court declared the contract, nullo void from the beginning.
Oh, wow.
Because its object, the construction of the resort, was just straight up unlawful.
Mhm.
So it's a really great example of how nulidad works.
Yeah.
It essentially vanished into thin air as if it never
It
existed.
was like it never happened.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's a powerful example
Yeah.
of how nulidad can protect people from bound by agreements that are like fundamentally flawed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, are there any other reasons why a contract might be considered nullo?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So nulidad can also apply if a contract lacks like the essential elements.
Okay.
So, for example, there was this case in 2019,
Mm-hmm.
and it was for like this big art sale,
Okay.
a contract for a major art sale.
Yeah.
And it was declared nullo because it didn't have
Okay.
like clear consent from one of the parties.
Gotcha.
And it turns out that the supposed seller was actually suffering from dementia.
Oh, no.
So they didn't really fully understand the terms of the agreement.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
But important to remember, right?
yeah,
Like, all parties have to be in agreement and have the capacity to consent.
absolutely.
What other scenarios can lead to nulidad?
Well, if it doesn't meet like very specific legal requirements,
Okay.
for instance, in Spain, you have contracts related to real estate or inheritance, right?
Mhm.
They have these like strict formatting rules.
Okay.
So if you like miss a step or you don't, properly notarize the document or something,
Mhm.
the whole thing
Yeah.
could be.
That risk.
Yeah,
So it's not just about the content. It's
It's
about, like,
softus.
yeah, the rules, dot your I's and cross your T's, right?
totally.
Especially in Spain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then finally, it can be deemed nullo if it violates what are called imperative legal norms,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
which are basically just like fundamental
Okay.
legal principles that can't be overwritten.
Mhm.
So it's like a safety net, basically,
Yeah.
that prevents agreements from going against like public policy or basic human rights and stuff.
Okay, so nulidad, we've established, deals with contracts that are like fundamentally flawed or illegal
Yeah.
from the get-go,
Yeah.
right? You mentioned annulabilidad, though,
Yes.
which is a bit more nuanced.
Yes.
How is that different?
Okay, so with annulabilidad, which is also known as like voidability or relative nullity, the contract isn't automatically invalid
Okay,
from the start.
gotcha.
It's initially valid, but it can be challenged
Okay.
and potentially voided later on
Okay.
due to specific like circumstances.
So it's like, it's kind of hanging in limbo,
Yeah, exactly.
waiting to see if someone's going to like contest it.
Yeah.
What kind of circumstances could lead to this?
Well, think about situations where one party might have been like pressured
Okay.
or tricked into signing the agreement.
Okay.
So, imagine you're negotiating a business deal
Mm-hmm.
and the other party like threatens you to make you accept their terms.
Oh, wow.
That could be considered coaxium duress,
Okay.
which is like a valid ground for annulabilidad.
So if you can prove that you were under duress, then you could potentially get that contract voided.
Yeah, but proving duress can actually be pretty challenging.
Okay.
You would have to like demonstrate in court that the other party like exerted, serious pressure
Okay.
that really influenced your decision to sign.
So it can't just be like you felt a little bit pressured.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to be like really, really serious.
Yeah, it has to have like significantly
Yeah.
impacted your consent.
Okay, so what about other grounds for annulability?
So there's also dolo, which is basically just deceit
Okay,
or fraud.
gotcha.
So let's say you enter into a contract to purchase a piece of land,
Okay.
and later you discover that the seller deliberately, like, misrepresented crucial information about the property.
Like what?
Like, maybe they didn't tell you that it was located in a flood zone or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a classic, like, bait and switch.
Totally.
So you could argue that you were tricked into signing that
Hey,
based on, like, false information.
Yeah, so dolo is a recognized ground.
Okay.
Annulability. But again, proving it requires, like, solid evidence.
Yeah.
You'd have to show that the seller, like, knowingly misrepresented this information, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that you, like, relied on that false information when you entered into the contract.
So keeping really good records is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, of all, communication, documentation, everything.
Yeah.
Like you're building a case file
Yeah.
in a detective novel.
Yep.
Okay, so with annulability,
Yes.
unlike nullity, it's
Mhm.
only the affected party,
Yes.
the one who is like pressured or tricked or lacked capacity, who can initiate the action
Exactly.
to void the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
It's up to them to,
Recognize they've been wronged
yeah,
and to take the steps
Mhm.
to remedy the situation.
absolutely.
Are there any other grounds?
Yeah, so the last key ground is error.
Error.
Yeah, which is basically a mistake that affects, like, the substance of the contract,
Okay.
but not just any mistake, right? It has to be, like, a really substantial error, like, relating to the essence
Yeah.
of the agreement.
Gotcha.
Something that, if you had known the truth,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have signed in the first place.
Okay, so
Yep.
annulability is really focused on like the integrity
Yes.
of consent.
Absolutely.
Right? It's all about ensuring that both parties entered into the agreement like freely
Yeah,
with a clear understanding of what they were getting into.
absolutely.
And here's where it gets interesting. Even if it's deemed like voidable,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily game over,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
The affected party can choose to like ratify or confirm the contract
Yep.
even after the issue is, redeemed.
Exactly.
So they could initially contest it, but then be like, you know what? I'm okay with it now.
Exactly.
Why would anyone do that?
Well, sometimes these issues can be resolved, right?
Mhm.
So maybe the other party offers compensation or, like, amends the contract
Right.
to make it a bit fairer.
Yeah.
So the person who was initially like, no, I don't want this, they might think,
Okay, this works for me now.
yeah, this is okay for me now.
Okay, so there's a bit more flexibility there.
Yeah.
And with nullity,
Totally.
allows for negotiation,
Yeah.
compromise, even after the contract has been challenged.
Right.
It's like a second chance for it to work out.
Totally.
Okay, so we've looked at nullity, we've looked at annulability. We still have rescission.
Yes.
What's that one all about?
Okay, so with rescission, we're moving into a whole different realm.
Okay.
So we're not talking about flaws in consent or the legality of the contract itself. It's about situations where unforeseen circumstances
Okay.
make it either impossible or incredibly unfair
Okay.
for one party to fulfill their obligations.
So it's like, okay, you sign the contract, everything's fine and dandy,
Yeah.
and then bam, life throws you a curveball.
Exactly.
It's like,
yeah.
okay.
What do we do now?
What kind of events? Give me some examples.
Okay, so imagine, right, you have a contract to, like, import a big shipment of goods from another country.
Okay.
And then suddenly a war breaks out in that region.
Oh, wow.
So now your supplier can't fulfill the order.
Yeah.
Or let's say you sign a lease for a commercial space.
Okay.
Right. And then a pandemic hits and your business has to shut down.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, these are
That's
the crazy unforeseen events that just make it, like, super difficult.
Yeah.
Or sometimes even impossible
Yeah.
to uphold, like, the original agreement.
It's like the contract was made in good faith.
Yeah.
But then circumstances just
Exactly.
changed dramatically.
And now it's just like,
out of our hands.
yeah, what do you do?
Yeah, totally.
And so rescission that upset.
Exactly.
Okay.
And unlike annulability, where only the affected party can like initiate action
Right.
with rescission, either party
Okay.
can seek to terminate the contract.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's about recognizing that, okay,
Mm-hmm.
circumstances have changed dramatically.
Totally.
And now maybe it's just better
Yeah.
to cut our losses and move on.
Totally.
What happens to the contract itself, though?
Okay, so it's not quite like nullidad, where it just becomes, like, void
Okay.
with rescission is terminated
Oh, okay.
from the point of declaration onwards.
Okay.
So, like, any obligations or, benefits
Yeah.
that occurred before the rescission are still considered valid.
Okay.
But it's like, from this point on,
Yeah.
it's done.
Okay.
We're not doing this anymore.
So it's not a complete erasure
Exactly.
of everything. It's just like acknowledging that, okay,
Mm-hmm.
things have changed so much, we can't possibly continue this.
Yeah, it's just not feasible.
Yeah, it's not fair. It's not feasible.
Totally.
Okay, so, and this is interesting, the Spanish Civil Code outline, like, specific situations that can lead to rescission, but, and these articles...
Provide a legal framework for assessing whether, it's actually warranted to terminate the contract.
It's not just a matter of, like, one party feels like, oh, I got a bad deal. Like, there has to be...
Yeah, there's specific...
grounds.
Yeah, legal grounds.
Okay, what are some of the key elements?
So, one common ground is Lesion.
Okay.
Which basically means that one party is suffering, like, significant economic harm.
Okay.
Due to, like, a really unfair
Okay.
or unbalanced contract.
Gotcha.
So, for example, if someone's, like, taking advantage of another person's, like, desperation or lack of knowledge to secure, like, super favorable terms,
Gotcha.
that could be considered Lesion.
It's about, like, protecting vulnerable parties from being exploited.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what other grounds?
So another ground is fraudulent conveyance.
Okay.
Which is basically just a fancy way of saying that someone is, like, trying to hide assets or avoid paying debts.
Oh, wow.
By transferring property through a contract.
Okay.
So the Spanish legal system really does not like that.
No.
When people try to, like, defraud creditors.
So if you're trying to pull a fast one,
Yeah.
Spanish law is going to catch you.
They will find you.
Okay, so rescission is all about ensuring these contracts are, fair, equitable, they're not being used for,
Yeah, exactly.
exploitation or deceit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it could also apply when a contract becomes, like, impossible to fulfill.
Okay.
Due to the loss or, like, destruction of the object of the contract.
Gotcha.
So, for instance, let's say you have a contract to buy, like, this unique piece of artwork.
Okay.
And then, like, right before the sale is finalized, it gets destroyed in a fire.
Yeah, okay.
So
that makes sense.
You can't expect someone to, like, pay for something that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, so rescission would be the solution in
Yeah.
that case.
Okay, this has been a really helpful overview of these three main ways contracts can be invalidated in Spain. Nulidad, annulabilidad, and rescission.
Yes.
But now I want to see how this plays out in the real world,
I know, me too.
Like, what are some real-world examples?
Yeah, let's look at some case studies.
Yeah, let's see how this theory translates into...
real life.
Yeah, the drama.
Legal dramas?
Me too.
Me too.
Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
All right, so we've laid the groundwork, right? We've gone through... nulidad, annulabilidad, and rescission in Spanish contract law. But I feel like sometimes these, like, legal concepts can be a little...
abstract?
Abstract, yeah. So I think to really get a good grasp of, like, their impact, we need to see them in action. In action.
Totally.
Right, like, see how they actually play out.
Real-world examples. Bring these to life. Yeah.
So let's start with a case that highlights the complexities of annulabilidad.
Okay.
So picture this.
Okay.
You got this young couple, right? They're super excited to buy their first home.
Okay.
And they sign a contract for this, like, charming apartment in Barcelona.
Nice.
Yeah. They're thrilled, but then later they discover that the seller failed to disclose this, like, major issue.
Like what?
The building is scheduled for extensive renovations.
Oh, no.
That are going to last for a month.
That's terrible.
So they're stuck with this apartment.
They can't live there.
Yeah, that they can't even live in.
Oh, no.
Does Spanish law offer them any recourse?
Ooh. I'm intrigued.
It does.
Okay.
This is where annulabilidad based on dolo comes in.
Right. Dolo, deceit, fraud.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So they could argue that the seller, like, intentionally hid this information to get them to sign the contract.
To trick them.
Yeah.
But proving dolo can be tricky.
Yeah.
What kind of evidence would they need?
Well, they'd need to show that the seller knew about these renovations, right? And intentionally, like, hid that fact.
Yeah.
So you're looking at things like emails, text messages.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even, like, testimonies from neighbors.
Right.
Who might have known about the building's plans.
Yeah, it's like building a puzzle, right?
Exactly.
You're trying to find all those little pieces to paint the full picture of the deception.
So what if they can actually prove dolo?
Okay. Yeah, what happens then?
Like, what are the potential outcomes?
Yeah.
Well, if the court sides with them, the contract could be declared, voidable,
they
might be able to just walk away from the deal and get their deposit back.
And get their money back.
Yeah, or the court could order the seller to, like, compensate them for, the hassle, inconvenience, all the expenses they incurred.
Because they can't live there.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So annulability really...
It's like a safety net.
Yeah.
Right.
It protects you.
It's like, okay, if this person acted in bad faith, there's a way for you to, like, not be completely screwed over.
Wow. Okay. That's good to know.
What if the seller's like, oh, I totally forgot to mention that?
Right. Yeah. What if it was a genuine mistake?
Yeah.
Is that enough?
I mean, probably not. A simple oversight is probably not going to be enough to trigger annulability. You really have to demonstrate, like, intent, right? Like they were deliberately
do it.
Yeah, concealing this information to mislead the buyer.
Right. So it's not just a mistake.
Yeah.
It's like calculated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This case really shows how important it is to do your research. Due diligence when you're entering into contracts.
Yeah.
Especially for something like a property. Like you really got to
ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Look at everything carefully.
View everything.
Yeah, and maybe even hire like a building inspector.
Yeah, good idea.
Totally. Before you commit to buying anything.
Let's look at a different case that illustrates rescission.
Okay.
So imagine this, right?
Okay.
You've got a Spanish olive oil producer.
Okay.
And they've signed this contract with like a major international distributor.
Okay.
Right? So they're super excited because they're going to expand their market.
Totally.
Get their olive oil out there.
Yeah.
But then a massive drought hits.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
The olive crop is wiped out.
Yeah, a huge portion of it is gone.
This is a nightmare for them.
Yeah, totally.
So now they're facing a shortage of olives, right? They might not be able to fulfill this contract.
Right, it's impossible.
Does Spanish law offer them any relief?
Yeah, this is where rescission comes in.
Okay.
Right, so they could argue that, okay, this is an unforeseen event.
Yeah.
It was out of my control.
Totally.
It's impossible for me to meet
my obligation.
It's not about like unwillingness.
Right.
It's just I literally cannot deliver.
Couldn't the distributor argue that they should have had insurance?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah, they could say that.
Or like taken other precautions to mitigate this risk.
Exactly.
And so this is where things get interesting because the court has to weigh all these different factors, right? Like how severe was the drought? Did they take,
reasonable
steps to try to minimize the damage? So it really is a question of like fairness.
Right. Totally.
Is it reasonable?
Like, was it their fault?
Yeah, exactly. To expect them to bear this burden.
Yeah.
What are some possible outcomes?
Okay, so if the court grants rescission, and then the contract would be terminated.
Okay.
So they would be freed from their obligation. To supply the olive oil.
But they might have to return any, like, upfront payments.
Yeah.
That they received. It's a tough situation for both parties, right?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, the producer...
Devastating loss.
Yeah, it's facing a devastating loss.
And the distributor can't get their olive oil.
Yeah, they're scrambling to find a new supplier.
Right, exactly.
So rescission really recognizes that sometimes, despite best efforts, right, these unforeseen things happen. Yeah.
And it can make a contract.
Yeah.
Totally unworkable.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Sometimes it's better to just move on. Okay, so we've seen how annulability and rescission play out in the real world. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Like, Spanish law really tries to find that balance between, like, uprolling the contract, but also being fair.
Yeah.
And making sure things aren't impossible.
Yeah. Look at a case that kind of, like, straddles the line.
Yeah. Okay.
Between nullity and annulability.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
So imagine a scenario involving, like, a contract for the sale of a rare antique.
Okay, cool.
But unbeknownst to the buyer.
Uh-oh.
It's a forgery.
Oh, no.
So we've got this contract based on a fundamental misrepresentation.
Right, about the object.
Yeah.
It's not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, so which type of invalidity applies here?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Is it nullity? Is it annulability?
It's tricky.
Yeah.
So you could actually argue for either.
Okay.
Depending on how you frame it.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down.
Okay, so if you focus on the fact that the object of the contract, a genuine antique, doesn't exist, then you could argue nullity.
Okay.
Right?
Because the contract's void from the beginning.
Exactly.
Because it's based on an impossibility.
They try to sell a unicorn.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
But you could also argue it from the annulability side.
Okay.
Right. Specifically, you could use dolo, deceit.
Okay.
So the seller knowingly misrepresented
Yeah.
the authenticity. So the buyer was tricked
Yeah.
into signing something.
Yeah.
That wasn't what it seemed.
Does Spanish law, like, lean towards one of those?
I think it depends on the specifics of the case.
Gotcha.
A good lawyer would be able to look at it and be like, okay, this is the best
strategy.
Yeah, this is the best way.
Choose the right tool for a job.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and this case also brings up, like, the importance of authentication.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with, like, valuable stuff.
Yeah, if you're going to buy a rare antique, get an expert.
Yeah, make sure it's real.
Yeah.
Get it authenticated.
Yeah, because that could save you
a lot of trouble.
Yeah, a lot of trouble down the road.
Totally.
So it's like a little bit of precaution can go a long way
in
these situations. Yeah. What if, those preventive measures fail?
Right.
And you find yourself with a contract that you're like, this is not right.
Yeah. What do you do?
What do you do?
What are the steps you can take?
Yeah, like what's the game plan? All right, let's dive into the practical stuff. Like, how do you actually deal with a potentially invalid contract in Spain?
Absolutely. What are those first steps?
Yeah. Okay, so we've been through a lot. We've gone through, all the theory behind these different concepts of invalidity in Spanish contracts. Yeah. We've seen, like, real-life examples. But now let's talk to the listener, right?
Right.
Imagine you're the listener. Yeah. You're sitting there, you're looking at this contract, and you've got that sinking feeling in your gut, right? Oh. Something's not right. Yeah. What do you do?
What's the game plan?
Yeah, what's the game plan?
Well, first of all, don't panic.
Okay, good advice.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You want to approach the situation with, like, a clear head.
Okay.
And think strategically.
Yeah.
Right? Remember, the Spanish legal system is designed to be fair.
Okay.
And to provide avenues for, like, redress.
Okay, so there's hope? There's hope. Okay, good. But where do you even begin?
Okay, so while you might end up in court, the first step is always to talk to a lawyer.
Okay.
Get some legal advice.
Yeah.
Find someone who specializes in Spanish contract law.
Okay, so find the expert.
Yeah,
gotcha.
They're going to be your guide.
Okay.
They'll explain everything to you.
So they're like your translator of, like, all that legalese.
Exactly.
Okay, so what happens next?
Okay, so
do they just, like, fire off a letter?
Not necessarily. Okay. So Spanish law actually emphasizes amicable solutions.
Okay.
Whenever possible.
So it's not like immediate.
Yeah, it's not like let's go to war.
Okay.
It's like let's see if we can work this out.
Okay, I like that. So what do those, like, out-of-court options look like?
So it could involve just, like, direct negotiation between the parties.
Okay.
Maybe the lawyers will act as, like, intermediaries.
Okay.
You could also do mediation.
Okay.
Where a neutral third party kind of helps facilitate the conversation.
Okay.
Guides you towards, like, an agreement.
So that sounds...
That's stressful.
Yeah, a lot less stressful.
Definitely.
And probably cheaper, right?
Yeah, a lot cheaper.
Than going to court.
Totally.
Okay, but what if the other part is like, yep, not budging?
So even then, your lawyer might send what's called a formal demand letter.
Okay.
And that would basically outline, like, the specific breaches of contract or, the grounds for invalidity.
Yeah.
And propose potential solutions.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a
clear communication.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, this is where we stand.
This is what we want.
Yeah.
This is the problem.
And sometimes that's enough to get people...
Yeah, to make them see.
Yeah. To be a little more reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, so you tried the diplomacy, right? But what if that fails?
Okay, so if you can't reach an agreement outside of court, then filing a lawsuit is kind of the next step.
Okay.
And this is where your lawyer really comes in.
Yeah.
To help you
navigate everything. Okay, so what are some things people should be prepared for?
Okay, so firstly, legal proceedings in Spain can take a really long time.
Okay.
We're talking months, sometimes even years.
Okay.
So it's not a quick fix.
So you got to be patient.
Yeah, patience is key.
Okay, what about, like, the financial side of things?
Yeah, so you'll have legal fees, court costs, maybe even expert witness fees.
Okay.
So it can get expensive.
So it's important to...
talk to your lawyer.
Yeah, have that upfront conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so do a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah.
Besides, the finances? Yeah. Be prepared for the emotional toll, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And just about the legal stuff. It's like, this is your life?
It's stressful.
Yeah.
It could be draining.
Yeah.
It's a roller coaster.
Are there any, like, resources?
Yeah.
Support systems out there for people who are going through this?
A lot of lawyers, they're aware
of
the emotional strain. So they can offer support.
Yeah.
There are also support groups and organizations that help people deal with legal challenges.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
That you're not alone in this.
You're not alone.
Okay, so amidst all the challenges and the uncertainty, right, what are some, like, potential upsides?
Okay, so if you have a really strong case, backed up by good evidence, and you've got, like, a great lawyer, you have a really good chance of a positive outcome.
So it's a gamble.
Yeah, kind of.
But there could be
big rewards.
Yep.
Okay.
And even beyond, like, the actual legal victory, there's like a sense of
vindication.
Yeah.
You know, you stood up for your rights.
Yeah, you held them accountable.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it really is about like
yeah.
seeking justice and fairness.
Totally.
Even if it's like a really long road.
Even if it's a tough road.
Yeah, tough road to get there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listeners, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Spanish contract law.
Yeah.
We've covered, nulidad, annulabilidad, rescission. Seen some real-life examples.
And even some practical steps.
Yeah, the practical stuff, too, of what to do if you're in this situation.
Totally.
And I think it's fascinating to see how, Spanish law provides this framework for dealing with all these complexities of contracts.
And make sure that everyone's treated fairly.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is really important.
And remember, we started with this, fun, playful name.
Oh, yeah, Aquí.
Yeah, Imek, Abogados.
Yeah, what a great name.
It's like, they get it,
Yeah, they're trying to make it...
Even in the serious world of law.
Yeah.
You can still have a little personality, a little fun.
Yeah.
So as you navigate the world of contracts, remember what you've learned today. Seek expert advice when needed.
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help.
And maybe channel a bit of that AV spirit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like even when things are tough,
yeah,
you can still approach them with a little bit of lightness.
Yeah.
And a belief in, fairness.
Fairness, totally.
All right, that's it for today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, thanks for joining us.